Hi, everyone. Welcome back to our podcast. My name is Lainey. I'm your co-host.
And this is Abraham, the other co host for the Grants and Government Contracting Podcast. Thank you for joining us. For some of you who are joining us live, it's good to see you here. For some of you who are watching this on replay, it's also great to have you hang out with us as well.
Yeah, so we're really excited this week. We are going to be talking about something I feel like everybody either is excited to talk about or kind of talked out about it, which is war, the conflict. If you've been on any social media, any news networks, anything, this is all everybody's talking about. But we really want to talk about, what does war mean for government contracting? Because it's different than just, the citizen side, the humanitarian side. There are some specific situations we're going to talk about with government contracting. But before we get into that, if you're joining us live, I see we have some live people. I would love for you to drop, your name, your company, where you're joining us from. We love to see everybody from around the nation and around the world. I will say me and Abe are sitting in Georgia, very hot. Yesterday it was 99 degrees. So I know that we're having a heat wave go through the entire states, but I always joke that it comes summer and we forget that last summer the weather was the exact same. So we always want to complain about it as if we have not grown up in this weather. Or for example, me, I'm a lifelong Georgian. I've grown up in this weather my entire life. So I should be used to June and July in Georgia, and it throws me off my feet every single time. So Abe, I have to ask, have you been playing pickleball in this heat?
I sure have. I think I've lost about 5 pounds playing pickleball in the heat, but
Yeah,
it's
it'd be
been,
the same thing as playing pickleball in a sauna. So that's
mm,
about the same idea.
yeah, but it's been fun. But I have to stay hydrated
Yeah.
out in the sun, and we play a little bit later in the evening, about 6:37. So get about 3 hours of sunlight to play in the evening. So
Yeah, making sure you're keeping hydrated and um I'll share this with the audience. I had a really scary something that happened this weekend. I have a dog. I have a golden retriever. We love him so much. And we were just outside, probably like 9. So it's dusk. It's cooled off, playing um, tennis ball. He's a retriever, so he loves to bring stuff back. And he actually had a heat stroke during that. And we had to, we were very worried. He didn't end up having to go to the vet. We were able to call our vet and, just cool him down, get him on water. But, I mean, I've never seen something happen like that. And it really wasn't even that hot. So, just making sure everybody's staying safe out there. Abe, you're staying safe, playing pickleball, drinking water, resting. Because I think we forget that sometimes this heat can really get to you.
absolutely. And well, talking about heat, right? I mean, we are there is a lot of heat in the world of Israel, and Iran, and Ukraine, and Russia, and the United States, and really in all the NATO countries. Lots of things going on in terms of things are heating up in terms of world conflicts. And if you're just joining us, that's what we're going to be talking about today in this episode here: war and the impact it has on business owners and government contractors. And so if you're joining us live, don't forget to put in where you're joining us from and the name of your organization. If you're watching us a replay, make sure you get a chance to click on the notification bell. That's how you can give back to us. Click on the notification bell and subscribe to the channel. But let's go ahead and dive in. Let's talk about, we can talk about, live pickleball and Alfie and all the other things, but let's dive into really what everybody's here to talk, to listen about, and the war and the pending war and anytime there's conflict. And so we're going to take you back a little bit to the history, right? The history of this nation.
Yeah.
And this nation was founded on what?
It's war, the Revolutionary War, which is,
Mhm.
July 4th, 1776, which I know that some of us will be eating hot dogs next Friday, for that July 4th. But I think that's important to note that, like Abe just said, that's what we were founded on. I mean, the whole reason that we are America is we had to fight a war to get here. from the British. Everybody's heard the British are coming, the British are coming. I've got that, and then throw in the tea into the harbor. But I think that does create this, I don't want to call it a stigma, but I mean, from the earliest people that were in America, war was a part of their time. And then, in my lifetime, I feel like we really haven't seen any major wars, but in, my parents' lifetime, grandparents, great grandparents, I mean, there were major wars that America was involved in. Some people did not agree with America being involved in. The same thing kind of happened with the situation we're in right now, but it's not something that's necessarily foreign. Every generation has had their conflicts, their wars. I was talking to my granddad earlier, and um, he was in the Air Force during Vietnam, but just, that was one of the first wars that was kind of televised. And I was talking about, what the current things that we're going through with Russia and Ukraine, and then this with Iran, how different would it be if it wasn't televised? What is it that media kind of fear mongering us? I mean, I know it's real situations, so they're not lying to us about it, but it's, what would that look like to not have the media where we get to see every single thing? We have videos of what's going on. We have pictures where in the past, when certain things like this have happened, it's really a government and a military issue instead of becoming an entire nation issue. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, Abe.
Well, this is a touchy subject, right? To talk about war and
Yeah.
but what we want to do is we want to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Mm-hmm.
And so the framework of what we're talking about here today is not to capitalize on people's lives or people's losses, but as a business owner, we are in the government contracting industry, and the DoD represents about Department of Defense. Their budget represents about 55-60% of all contracting opportunities. And so we also recognize that there are losses, people's lives uh,
Mm-hmm.
have been lost during this year. Uh, our military people are in danger. Whether we consider somebody an enemy combatant or not, uh, the reality of it is war is ugly. But also, we want to look at outside the human side of it. We also want to look at the human side from you as a business owner. We live in an economy that is built around, as government contractors, we live in an economy that's built around the DoD. And so
Yeah.
we also want to look at what are the opportunities, what are some challenges, and where do you need to, what kind of perspective should you have on this here? How do you prepare yourself and understanding the landscape of the government contracting marketplace? So that's really what we want to look at, and not to take advantage of people's lives and losses, but to look at, okay, we are a defense economy, and we call it the defense industrial base. And so we want to look at that so that you can better prepare yourself for the opportunities that will lie in the future and is currently available. That's available here, and we're not focusing a lot on civil agency, but today we want to focus on the defense industrial base and the DoD opportunities there as well. But I want to take everybody on a little bit of historical, and I want to share this site, and I'm going to put the link into the chat area. This is probably one of the best article or best thesis that I have ever read as it relates to government contracting itself. And this thesis was written by Shyam Sankar, who is the CTO of Palantir. If you don't know Palantir, Palantir is probably one of the most profitable government contracting company out there. They're publicly traded company. They're part of the S&P 500. Recently got listed on the S&P 500 last year, 2024. And so in that scenario, they address some challenges and some pain points that currently exist as it relates to the defense industrial base. So I want to start by talking about this here, and feel free. We're not going to cover everything that is in this article here, and I'm going to start at the very bottom and to kind of share what this is about. So we go to the very bottom. So he says, I nailed these theses to the Pentagon Metro entrance, not because I hate the department and my nation, but because I love them profoundly. So
Mhm.
just like Martin Luther nailing the thesis on on the Catholic Church wall, he is nailing his thesis, and this is really what we're reading, looking at. So very, very insightful. But I'm going to go back to the beginning and hit a few things. So as we go through this, Sarah, again, feel free to read through the whole article. But I'm going to talk about a few items here. And he starts off by talking about we are a nation at war, whether we believe we to be or not.
Yeah.
We constantly have enemy states, and we are at war. So that's really the framework of what he starts at, and then he goes into examples of how Russia annexed Crimea, and really the what's happened in Ukraine as well. China militarized the Spratly Island, and in many other different situations. The U.S. was attacked 300 times in the last decade by Iran, and but then as he continues to talk about this here, he goes into a word, and I had to look up this word here. This word is actually a very interesting word,
That's another
monopsony.
one. Yeah.
Lainey, yeah, you're an English major. What's your take on the word monopsony?
Well, I think when I first read it, I actually read it as monopoly, which is funny. But I mean, that's kind of what it is, which is mono means one. So,
Hmm.
we've created this economy of war where one or a very tight group knit of people are the ones that are, I don't even want to use this word, but benefiting from war.
Hmm.
And that's just the truth. I know we're diving into this word. I wanted to say something about the first paragraph of that we're kind of already in war. It just looks a little bit different. I was talking, some of my family are active military and actually saw them this weekend. And of course, just talking about what's going on. And that one of them said, he said, we've been in World War III. It just looks a lot different than what World War One and Two. And I don't know if we'll ever have a true war where there's people fighting, over a line in a field, that kind of stuff. It looks a lot different because of modern technology, the different things that we're doing. But we've already been in this war with, if it's with Ukraine and Russia, if it's in the Middle East, there's a lot of things that are going on. And that's what
Or
he said.
cyber war, right? We're
Yeah.
constant in a cyber war.
Hmm. Yeah, 100%. So I think it's interesting because a lot of it's behind the scenes where maybe us as civilians, we're not seeing it. This week we've been seeing it, but we don't necessarily see it front and center, but it's still happening behind the scenes. But yeah, that monop mon, monopsony. Yeah, I
Mhm.
read it as monopoly, which I feel like it's giving the same definition as how you would use monopoly. Um,
Yeah, so I actually had to, because that was the first time, I read this here about 4 months ago, 5 months ago, and this is really the first time we're talking about it publicly here. The monopsony, I had to go look it up, and what it really means is kind of the opposite of a monopoly. Whereas a monopoly, one company controls they have the good or the services, the goods or services, and they control pricing from a market perspective, from selling their products to the world. Monopsony is the opposite of that, where one organization, they have the
Fine.
buying power and they control the market condition. So, so what this article is talking about is that the United States, the DoD more so, is a monopsony, meaning that they are so big and so powerful. And in a little bit, we're going to look at their budget. We're going to look at how much spending that our DoD is actually have, and our total budget as a whole. How much buying power does the DoD have, and how they control the market condition from a purchasing power perspective, whereas a monopoly is a selling power perspective where they control the market from a different angle. But it goes into it, and it says the risk to that is this here. And Shine goes into, and he talks about the risk in that. He said that in back in the 60s and the from 40s, we went from 51 prime contractors that controlled that was thriving in the DoD marketplace to today there's only 5 major players.
Yeah, which I thought was so interesting. So as you can see, they're calling it the Last Supper. And they
Mhm.
brought in these 51 primes, kind of a meeting, they all knew each other. They were all frenemies. And they said five of you will make it. Kind of like almost like a game of Survivor or something like that. And so we're able to see in this chart what used to be the 51 main primes and how, and we already know what one of them is going to be because we talk about them a lot, which is Lockheed Martin. They're the ones that we always talk about, but they were one of the 5 that made it out.
Now, if we look at this here, there's some interesting things here, right? Because
Yeah.
part of what Shaim is talking about here is that in the past, you have organizations or businesses, they have a government contracting department and a commercial private sector department,
Yeah.
to where there was balance in terms of goods and services that they can provide, right? If you look at Goodyear, right? Goodyear had a Goodyear Aerospace. If IBM had a Federal Systems, and we look at this here, we will see that lots of different corporations from the big Chrysler used to build technology for the government, and so you have all these different huge big conglomerate corporation, but they did private sector and they did government contracting work as well.
Yeah.
And if we look at this consolidation, we all of these different companies at some point they got bought out by Lockheed Martin, or they decided to sell off or to divest all of their resources. And so we consolidate to Lockheed Martin as the top in terms of the largest in terms of revenue from the government. And then you got Boeing,
Yep.
and then you have RTX. And RTX, for some of you who may not be familiar with the acronym here, this is Raytheon. And then you got Northrop Grumman, and then you got General Dynamics. So all of these different companies eventually became one, like Motorola and all these different Chrysler and General Dynamics, and all of these different companies consolidate into just one.
One thing I thought was interesting when I was doing research on today, I was kind of looking at the history of war in America, but war is the reason like we got the GPS and those kind of things. When I saw Motorola, that made me think of it. It's interesting that that stuff, at one point only the military used it, and now we have our phones that you can GPS yourself anywhere. So I thought that was interesting.
And the risk with this here is that as a nation, we depleted, when the war in Ukraine started, we depleted our military arsenal in 10 days, sending it to support the Ukrainian war efforts over there. And so all of the and when we say we're supporting Ukraine $50 billion, we're not sending new munitions or new items to Ukraine. We're not sending, we send a little bit of that in money, but we're actually sending them our old stockpile of munitions to Ukraine. Why? Because it's been sitting there for 15 years, 20 years, 30 years. And so that's what we're sending. And then all the new technology that's being built, all the munitions and all of the weaponry that's being built is put into stockpile. what this article is talking about is that as a nation, uh, because we don't have the commercial companies that have the ability to build, to support the any war effort, should there ever be a true war, where we actually, fight, as in where what's happening in Ukraine and Russia, or what happened in Gaza and Israel, we would not survive. And it talks about our enemy, which the largest manufacturer is China. China is considered an enemy combatant to the United States. They're our trade partner, but when it comes to political, they're also our a political enemy in that regard. So we cannot out manufacture China, because why? Their companies, they do commercial work and they do government DoD work, whereas we're down to five major war production companies, and so if should there ever be such a thing as that traditional war, we will lose. So that's really what this article talks about. And Palantir, which again, this article is written from their perspective. If you look at the market cap, they,
Wow.
even though they only have 3,892 employees, they have more market cap than Lockheed Martin. Lockheed Martin has 185,000 employees. They were founded in 1934. The only company that is a government contractor that is publicly traded, um, on the S&P 500 is Palantir, and they were the only one that's founded after the year 2000. Everybody else is all these old company, and this was
1886. Wow.
1886. So if you look at Huntington Ingalls, they've been around for a long time, and with over $7 billion, 44 employees.
Abe, so I had a question.
Mhm.
We had those 51 companies and now we have these five in the government market.
Yeah.
Those companies, do you know anything about, did they just go out of business or they're just doing commercial?
Uh, some of them that were actively, mainly in the federal space, they sold or they died off. And then some of them they shifted completely, like Chrysler, right? They shifted completely to just the commercial side of it.
Yeah.
And then there's one example that Raytheon actually decided, hey, we're so successful in the federal marketplace, why don't we start and compete in the private sector? So they started a construction company, and they could compete in the private sector, because in the government market, they have, contracts came to them easily. As one of the top five, contracts came to them easily. They didn't have to really compete, because when you're competing one of five, and you shift to the commercial sector, and you're competing against one of 500,000 other
Yeah.
construction companies out there. They lost money, and so they retreated from the private sector, and now they're just focused on federal itself.
Yeah, and I know we're gonna dive in. We only have an hour today, so we want to really talk about some other stuff. But when I was reading this article, the one we had just looked at, I thought it was really interesting them talking about how modern day contracting, which is what we do, has really hurt, or in their opinion, has hurt us because I mean, we know how government contracting, if anybody's done a bid, if you're selling a good or service, you have your price, you put a markup on it, you give it to the government. I mean, that's how these companies are making money. And so when they were talking about it, I was like, it was just an interesting perspective. And I highly recommend y'all just to go read it because we're on the government contracting side. So, of course, we're used to markups. We just know that's how the business is. We kind of have thought of it as positive. But it was interesting them talking about that.
All right, so let's look at the opportunities, for that matters to you as a business owner here. So we've talked about this here, some of the challenges that exist. I want to go and look at the 10-year budget of,
Wow.
this is the actual DoD budget from 2015 to 2024. This is what's actually spent, right? So in 2015, we were spending $598 billion in terms of DoD, the total budget. And as of 2024, we spent $910 billion as our total budget. Now, 2023, there's an increase because of what happened in Ukraine. So DoD increased in 2023, and things start to stabilize a little bit in terms of the efforts to support what's happening in Ukraine. So that's why it came down a little bit. But outside of that, because that's a major war that's going on, outside of that, it has increased year after year. Outside of this $6 billion decrease here from 2023 to 2024. So that's a 52% increase from 2015 to 2024. But let's look at the opportunities. And to understand opportunities, we're going to look at the budget. So the budget from 2016 as compared to the fiscal year 2026, which is pending right now, getting approved right now, that's a $386 billion increase from $624 billion to $1.01 trillion. So we're going to hit the $1 trillion DoD budget for this fiscal year. From that,
that's kind of unfathomable to me. You hear trillions. We always in school talked about, the debt's at $1 trillion, whatever. But then seeing that we're going to have a budget that we spend $1 trillion in 1 year kind of blows my mind.
Yeah. And from that, GovWin, this is a budget that GovWin put together, an anticipated budget for the DoD. Of that 1.1 trillion, 962 billion, it's available to businesses as a government contractor.
Wow.
So, because not all of it is available, right? Some of it might be for personnel, might be for other things. But in terms of opportunities as for businesses who are government contractors, they're saying 962 billion of that, which is a 13.4% increase from the year to 2026. But let's look at the contract awards of what happened in 2024 that's tied back to DoD. So DoD as a whole in 2024, they awarded $456 billion to businesses. And so last year, 2024, $770 billion total contract awards. So DoD awarded more, about 60% of all the spending awarded to businesses last year.
Yeah.
For a total of 4 million contracts that was awarded. In the Army.
With the DoD, what do you see a lot on the set-asides? We are supposed to have small business set-asides, and we don't always meet those. But, I mean, even if you met a 2.5% set-aside, that's a lot of money for small businesses.
Yeah, so as a SDUSB, it's 3% with DoD. So 3% of, 456 billion, that's about $12 billion.
Yeah.
And for women-owned businesses, 5% is the goal. So 5% of $456 billion, right? That's about $22 billion that's available for women-owned businesses. If you're an 8A company, this set-aside goal for 8A company is 5%. And so now you're talking about, $22 billion of opportunities, for 8A companies to do work for the DoD. HubZone company, the same thing, right? 3%. Yeah. So you're talking about $13 billion or so.
Which is, it's just an insane amount of money. We can talk about it, but I think that's kind of the silver lining of anything we're talking about is there are opportunities for small businesses, and it doesn't just have to be these 5 main players in the games. Those main players, they're looking for subs that are all the set-asides, and there's opportunities that if you have your past performance, you can be the prime. You can create a partnership with a WOSB and an SD via VOSB. So that is the silver lining of looking at all of this.
And that's really what we're talking about, right? That article that we just looked at, they're saying that it's been so consolidated that we need more small businesses. Even though small businesses, there's about 30, a little bit close to about 34 million businesses in the United States. 99% of them, based upon the SBA size standard, are considered small businesses. Small businesses contribute in terms of new employment 60% of all the new hires are created by small business owners. But when it comes to government contracting, the monopsony, which is the DoD, controls so much of it that they have eliminated a lot of competition, and we're continuing to move in a direction where small businesses don't always have the opportunities to succeed. But through set asides and through, we need small businesses to participate in the government marketplace, especially DoD.
Yeah, so we have a comment from one of our watchers from LinkedIn. They said, for a long time, the market has been monopolized with just those few companies. As someone who owns a small business and looking to work with the government, it's a little intimidating.
It is intimidating because there's the federal acquisition regulation. There's 53 parts to it, over 2,000 pages. So, for most of you, you've probably never read the FAR. Some of you, you may have looked at maybe FAR Part 19. But there's a lot of parts of the FAR that's very important to you, like FAR Part 19, which talks about small business certifications. FAR 15.6 talks about unsolicited proposals. So there's different aspects of the FAR that matters to you. And so go and read that. It is intimidating because you just don't know where to start. That's really why you're in this podcast with us here, right? You're joining us live because you have an opportunity to really come and learn. But we actually have a formal training program that's actually starting on July 8th. It's called the Certified Capture Manager Training Program. And it's a 14 weeks where we give you 3 to 4 years of knowledge in 14 weeks. So imagine, every 3-4 weeks, you're getting 1 year worth of knowledge. And so we're going to teach you how to be a sales or capture manager for your own company. And at the end, you actually get 4 years of knowledge in a very short period of time. You get a business coach. You get in fact, I'll go into details on that in a little bit. So stick around to the end, and we'll cover that. But the link, if you want a copy of the link, it's in the description area, in the chat area, and take a look at the link, and we'll come back and address that a little bit and share with you more about the Certified Capture Manager program, because that's really, if you're intimidated or you're confused or you're like, hey, I've tried this here and I just have not succeeded the way I've envisioned that I want to succeed in this industry, the CCM program is perfect for you.
Yeah, and I just added those in the chat and in LinkedIn. I want to say this. That's how I got started in the government contracting space. Is so I was not I had not had any contracts. I really wasn't familiar. And I found Abe, got to meet him, hear his story, and joined CCM. And it was one of the greatest things I ever did. Not just saying that because I'm on the GCA team, but you learn so much. I always joke and say that I learned more in that class than I did my entire 4 years in college. So if Abe could go start, creating courses for everything you need to learn, I think that we would all be smarter because the course really does. It just teaches you so much. But all right, let's keep going. See who else is spending a lot of money.
Mm-hmm. All right. So within the DoD, you got the Army. So the Army awarded $108 billion, 86,000 contract awarded. The Navy, which the Marine falls into the Navy, 135 billion and 119,000 contracts. The Air Force, 102 billion, over 60,000 contract was awarded. And some of you guys, you're familiar, Space Force is a new agency that's under the Air Force. And there's actually another one called Space Command. So, or Fleet Command? No, Space Command. Yeah. So multiple new agencies, and my generation, we're just, I'm straight from the jungles of Laos, right? So in my generation, I'm just happy to be able to fly on an airplane to go from one place to another place. But my kids in their generation, they're going to say, "Oh, what are you doing for the weekend?" "Oh, yeah, I'm taking a trip to space." It's going to
Yeah.
be, I'm going
Mars.
to take a trip to space.
Yeah. On
That's
a Friday
reality.
night, instead of going to the
Mhm.
movies, we're gonna close down all the theaters and go to space.
Yeah, that's reality. So Space Force is real, and then there's hundreds and hundreds of sub agencies under the DoD, such as the Army Corps of Engineers and Army Medical, and lots of AFES, the Army Air Force, the naval exchanges. So lots of sub agencies under DoD itself for a total of $456 billion. These are real opportunities for you as a business owner to come and pursue these millions and millions of contract awarded. But let's look at some other areas of opportunities, right? This is a image of a military base. Did you know that the DoD have 568,000 facilities worldwide?
Yeah.
What does that practically mean? What do you think, Lainey? If the DoD has 568 facilities worldwide, what does that mean for businesses?
It means that if you were in facilities management, like my
Mhm.
company is in, they need everything. They need people to fix their air conditioning. They need people to cut their grass. A lot of those places you'll see come for bid. They need food to feed our military. They need everything. So when you look at how large that is, and you think about it, that's every continent. I don't know if I don't it's not every single country, but it's a lot of countries that we have places in. And they all need the same things. So it's not like they're self-sufficient.
IT services,
Yeah.
document management, janitorial
Security.
services, security guards, HR services, leadership training, you name it, they need it. And
I was talking this morning to someone at a networking breakfast, and he is actually a former contracting officer. So it's really cool to just get to speak with him. But he was saying one of the hardest things that, and he's been out for a little bit, a couple years, but he said the hardest things for them to find when it came to facilities were TVs that were not Wi-Fi, not Bluetooth, not smart
Mhm.
TVs. He said we just needed a TV that could have cable on it. And he said you would think that's not a hard ask, but you get to looking for it and you're like, well, they don't make TVs. Everybody wants a smart TV. So then you were actually paying, they ended up paying more money for just you know,
A dumb TV.
yeah, a standard screen. That is what they wanted versus, you could have went to Walmart and buy a 90-inch TV for $200, but they didn't want any of that. So some of the things can be very, very niche. Things that they need just because it's security. And they can't they didn't want somebody to be able to hack their TVs is what it was. So,
Yeah, we call it IoT, right? The Internet of Things.
yeah.
So when we say we have a smartphone, that means it's connected to the internet. If we say we have a smart TV, it's connected to the internet, and that means that a smart refrigerator, a smart coffee maker, whatever you got,
Light
there's
bulbs now.
Internet of Things. Everything's connected to the internet, and the software that manages that, a lot of it is written by third party countries, and
Yeah.
and so if they make the product, they put software behind it. In some enemy states, there's a back door through the software, and
Yeah.
so they can snoop in the US, especially the military. They don't want any of those things there.
Which
So
I would say the military is not using this, but something I've been seeing a lot of is that either if it's from different countries or whatever, people are able to hack baby monitors. I know that's very random. I am expecting, so that's something I have been kind of researching, but I would have never thought that. I would have never thought that somebody wants to log in and look at my baby monitor in the middle of the night. But now they're all coming out with baby monitors that are kind of a step back where they don't connect to Wi-Fi because then it can't be hacked. So I think it's funny how we go forward and then we go back. It's kind of
mhm,
like a wheel of science.
that's the reality that we live in. And then let's talk about NATO, right?
Yeah, this just
We've
happened.
we've had the conflict. between Israel and Iran for the last 14, 15 days. And, you know, President Trump went to meet with NATO countries and said, hey, we are going to um, ask and demand, not just ask, you know, the US is demanding that all NATO countries, all 32 countries, increase their GDP, their DoD spending to 5% of the GDP.
Mhm.
So now most countries are at about, some of them are under 1%, some of them are at 2%, but nobody's at 3%.
Mhm.
The US is the only country that's at 3.5% of, you know, DoD spending as it relates back to GDP. So 5% of the US's total GDP is about $29 billion. So we're at about 1 trillion going into 2026. So we're at 3.5% of GDP. And the goal is to get to 5% for all NATO countries.
Yeah,
And
which it's interesting that we're the ones spending 3.5% because we have the largest GDP, where some of these other ones, like you said, are spending 1% and they have way smaller GDPs than we do.
but practically, what does that mean? Well, that means that as a business in the government market, DoD is the largest ecosystem as it relates to government contracting opportunities. Whether we like it or not, your business have to have a focus on DoD and DoD's expenditure and DoD opportunities. So tracking all of these, you know, budgets and all of these statistics, it's important for you so that you can prepare appropriately.
Yeah, I agree. Are are you going to pull up one of our favorite websites to show about this?
I'm actually pulling up. Yeah, we talked about the Capture Manager program.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
that's a good one.
yeah, I want to share a little bit about this here. So if you are confused or you're trying to think, okay, how do I navigate the DoD, the, you know, be part of the defense industrial base? How do I navigate this marketplace? We actually have a great program to really help you to navigate this industry here. And it's called the Certified Capture Manager and the CCM. We call it short CCM program. And it's a professional training program. It's equivalent, it's actually approved by the state of Georgia as a post-secondary educational program, very similar to private university, but instead of a degree program, it's a certificate program. We go
Yeah.
through the same rigorous process that the state of Georgia will have to approve private universities, or for example, if you want to be a barber, if you want to be a hairstylist, the schools that you attend, they have to get approved by the state of Georgia with certain standards and certain curriculum that has gone through a vetting process. So the CCM program, it's state approved. We're actually in the process of getting um, approval by the VA so that we can take GI Bill as well. So in the very near future, that's very possible that veterans can actually use their benefits to enroll to the CCM program. But what do you get here, right? So this here benefits to you is it helps you to win more contracts. That's really benefit number one. It also distinguishes you from all your peers because we graduated about 400-ish students from this program here. And it distinguishes you from everybody else as a certified capture manager. Even though you may be the CEO of your own company, but automatically you're also the capture manager. You're the chief rainmaker. So by getting certified as a capture manager means that you understand how to sell to government agencies. If you are a salesperson, and you're not the CEO of your own company, but you're a salesperson working for another company, we actually have large corporations that send their salespeople to the CCM program, and where their company pay for them to attend the CCM program. And the average salary of a capture manager is 159,000. This is pulled directly from Glassdoor, their salary tracking. So if you're a salesperson, the average salesperson is about 65,000. Uh,
Yeah.
you can potentially increase your salary. Now, 159 means you're not a junior capture manager, right? That means that you have experience.
Yeah. Well, we've seen too, and I know you just pointed this out, but I mean, we've seen companies come through where maybe they have their top three people come through, their CEO and two people, and they take it together because there is some partnerships that, form study partners and that kind of stuff through CCM, but taking it together that way they can learn together. And then once they graduate, are able to kind of take it back to their company and put the pen to paper and begin, they're all on the same page because they've been through the same course.
Yep. So what's in here? 14 weeks of instructor-led classes. You also get the Gov Fast Track software. You get the Gov LMS, the learning management. You also, at the end, you take a test to pass so that you can be certified. There's a boot camp at the end, 2-day boot camp, and 12 hours of videos. And we have a new tool
Mm-hmm.
that's actually available. So let me share that new tool with everybody. So we actually have the prep certification program. In the prep certification program, you actually, you as a student in the CCM program, this is a self-paced, prep stands for procurement readiness educational program. And with this here, you actually get all of the resources to create your capability statement, your marketing documents, your capability video, how to you getting registered in SAM, and all of this here. And some of you are already registered in SAM, but it makes sure that you're properly registered in SAM. I
Mm-hmm.
would say about
Everything's up to date. Yeah.
75% of you are not properly registered in SAM. And so this here will help you to do that there. So lots of great resources available to you. And let me give you an example of the Gov Fast Track software. This is an example of one of the companies that went through the CCM program. They came, and so in the CCM program, we take you through the 5 P's: P plus P plus P plus P equals P. The last P is profit. So we take you through really 4 phases to get to the profit phase. And it gives you a step-by-step process of how to succeed and how to grow, especially in the DoD. And so if you click on assessment, it's got all these different steps. These are the steps. Now, if you're thinking, I haven't succeeded in the government market the way, now some of you have won, you get lucky, you win 1 or 2 contracts, but you can't reproduce a success. But the reason you can't reproduce a success is there's steps in here that you're missing.
Yeah.
Now, do you need to do all these steps here to win a contract? No. Because all you need to do is be registered in SAM and submit a proposal. But that's getting lucky. The
Mm-hmm.
more of these steps that you put in place, the more infrastructure that you have, the greater your chances of succeeding. So that's what this is, right? It takes you from your business infrastructure to your marketing, to your image, your branding, your capability brief, your PowerPoint, your capability videos. I would say 95% of you do not have a capability video.
Yeah.
And that's a shame. Why? Because contracting officer, they rather click a video to watch and learn about your company, your capabilities, versus looking through your PDF of your capability statement. So we teach you how to do that there. And we give you examples, not only just teach you, but give you examples. And then we talk about networking, where to go to build relationship. If you're emailing a contracting officer, what do you say? We put templates in here. All these templates are in here already. And then ultimately, we teach you how to find opportunities and how to write proposals. And so that's really the whole program. But let me give you an example of this company here. So this company here, they started, um, this is a father, son, mother team. They started, they did not have a company. They went out there and formed a company. And this is kind of like what they went through. They started the company. They decided what services, what offerings that they need to have. They went and built a website, and ultimately, guess what? They
1
6
contract.
months later, they won the first 2 contracts. So
Yeah.
from February to August, they were able to win the first 2 contracts from no company to, in a very short period of time, getting their first few contracts. Now they want multiple more contracts.
And I
So
know that Abe right now, him showing you all these this huge spreadsheet, it looks very intimidating, but that's why the course is so great, because each week it's broken down. You have your homework, you have what you're looking at, that it's not overwhelming. If you're just starting a company or something and you don't have guidance, it can be very overwhelming, especially when you have a million things on your to-do list. Where do I start? How do I even go? You're getting caught up in the minuscule things. That's why CCM is so great, because each week you're learning how to do it, and then you're applying it for your homework in your lab. So it's very straightforward.
So we got time for a few quick questions before we wrap up here. So I want to see if anybody have questions in terms of what we've covered about the DoD, the budgets, or about the CCM program, or anything else out there. See if we have any questions for anybody, and then we will wrap up today's podcast. Now, if you're just joining us live, thank you for hanging out with us. If you're watching this on replay, it's always great to have you join us on replay. Leave a comment if you're watching this on replay. Let us know what you're learning, and if you want to learn something, you want us to cover something in our podcast, a topic or something like that, leave a comment, and we will do our best to. I read through pretty much every single comment out there, so if you leave a comment, we'll read through it, and we can address some of your specific pain points as well. Any questions for anybody? You can put in the chat area in terms of your questions that you may have for us, and then we'll close out today's podcast with any final questions that anybody has.
Yeah, and I just dropped our contact us that has our email. If you want to email us, have any questions about anything, want to kind of get in contact, and it also has our YouTube. So that's where all of our past podcasts are going to be on. Future ones are posted there, so you can register and never miss another podcast. We do this every Wednesday at 11:30 Eastern Standard Time, and we're always teaching or trying to bring kind of a little bit about what's going in our world and how it really affects government contracting. Before we sign off, Abe, I wanted to ask this. So I know this has been an ongoing 6-month conversation because of just everything that's happened this year, but are you starting to see a lot more opportunities, trickle through? I know we were kind of some people at a standstill. Some of our clients had even, not lost contracts, but they were no longer contracts. Like they had won and they weren't able to participate. So are you kind of seeing that turn back around since we're, halfway through the year?
Yeah, absolutely. There's some big changes that's happening right now. When the new Trump administration took office, they went through cut. Doge went through terminating contracts. A lot of opportunities that people have submitted proposals on were not being released because they were not awarding contracts during that period for the last 6 months, pretty much.
Yeah.
But what I've seen in the most recent few weeks is this year. For example, one of the companies that I'm coaching, they submitted 3 proposals, and it's been about 5-6 months, and they haven't heard anything. Well, within 1 week, they got awarded 2 contracts and 1 contract pending. But it may, if they can defend why it should be awarded, they may take that 1 proposal that was submitted, or 1 opportunity, they may just take off the board completely. But within a week and a half or so, they were able to get notification on 3 contract opportunities. 2 of them, they're going to win those 2. So yes, so there's opportunities being released right now. I've seen an influx of new projects being listed in sam.gov or in govgenie.com. So lots of opportunities that's hitting the street right now. This is the time to get into the government market. Don't wait until it's hot again, because it's been cold, right? And everybody, and I've shared this with everybody. When everybody tells you to buy a stock, that's the worst time to buy. When everybody's telling you to sell a stock, that's the worst time to sell. So a few months ago, people would say, hey, I don't know if government contracting is right for me. Because people are telling me that it's a nightmare or it's bad.
Yeah.
Well, if they waited until the market turns around, then they're behind the curve.
Yeah, you're too late then.
Yes, too late. For those that stuck through it, this is the opportunity. And if you're thinking, should I get into the government market? This is the best time to get to the government market, not before everybody else is in the market. but the time to get into the market is when people are still not sure.
Yeah, and I don't know if anybody's on here has got to watch me and Guy's podcast. He was our special guest, and we talked about fourth quarter marketing. But right now we're going to be heading into fourth quarter soon, and if they do not spend it, they're going to lose it. So I could see that we are going to have a way more influx of opportunities than we've seen even the last years because there wasn't that much spending in the beginning of the year. So they've got to catch up to make sure that all the budgets for next fiscal year are where they need them to be at. So I think we're going to see a lot of opportunities, a lot of products, services that they've got to spend this money.
Yep, and we're talking about days, right? July 1st is the beginning of the fourth quarter, so pay attention. Opportunities. I will say it's going to be raining opportunities, so get your buckets out, go and capture some of these opportunities out there for your business.
Yeah, and I think it's also a great time. We talk about this a lot, but networking with your contracting officers, or anything. If you're not seeing the opportunities come through, you can still friend them on LinkedIn. Make some connections because we've seen that work so well for our clients.
So with that said, don't forget to come hang out with us next week, same time, 11:30 Eastern time every Wednesday, for the Grant and Contract podcast. So with that, there you are one contract.
And you are one grant away from all your dreams, for that new office you want, for that new employee you want. Just one grant and one contract away. Thank y'all for joining us today, and we will see y'all next time.
All
Bye
right, take care,
bye.
everybody. Have a good one.